2 weeks ago, hundreds, some say up to 2,000 people were killed during ethnic unrest in Kyrgyzstan. Now the results of a referendum have shown that overwhelmingly people there want a parliamentary democracy. Turnout was huge. Up to 70% of the country's 2.7 million voters had their say, and 90% of them gave a resounding yes. Tarek Basley has the details.
A new political dawn for Kyrgyzstan. Sunday's referendum saw overwhelming support for a new constitution, paving the way for Central Asia's first parliamentary democracy.
According to preliminary information, about 90% of the votes cast were in favour of adopting a new constitution. More than 7% were the votes against, and 2% were invalid.
The country's interim president seeing the result as an endorsement of her right to rule and a reflection of the people's appetite for change.
We consider the referendum a success. The new constitution of the Kyrgyz Republic has been approved despite a strong resistance by its opponents. More than half the citizens of the country came to vote in the referendum. And by doing this, the people put to an end the authoritarian, family-run rule of the two previous presidents.
Many Kyrgyz, though, much less confident of a change for the better.
This is probably the third or fourth constitution that we're approving. In my view, the latest parliamentary one will be the best. We discussed it in the family for a month and a half. I think the parliamentary constitution will be better.
I think that there is no reason to vote because from my own experience, I know that our government is corrupted.
And in Osh, the epicenter of recent violence, continuing fear. Trust in the government shattered by the inter-ethnic killings.
Here in Kyrgyzstan we always have a revolution. A president is always under pressure. People don't want to see him as a leader. Nobody listens to each other. So we don't expect anything good in our country, and the new constitution won't help.
Fearing further violence in some Uzbek neighbourhoods, voters were too afraid to venture out. The Central Election Commission responded by bringing ballot boxes to the voters, eager for a high turnout and to include ethnic Uzbeks.
We want peace and calm. That's the most important thing, that everything should be calm. We've been running here, running there, people shooting.
International observers say the ballot was peaceful and largely transparent, but have warned improvements are needed before upcoming parliamentary elections. In the wake of this month's violence, the challenge now for the country's political rivals to work together to build a new democratic society. Tarek Basley, Al Jazeera.
To Robin Forestier-Walker now live in the capital Bishkek. Robin, overwhelming support for this referendum. You've been there throughout all the problems, the killings over recent weeks. Does this make sense to you?
Well, I was out at a polling station yesterday on the outskirts of Bishkek, and really I was quite surprised, and it was quite heartening to see reasonable numbers of people turning up and doing their civic duty and taking part in this. And you know, down to the last man, everybody here wanted to support this referendum, and that's what it was all about. If you were going to be prepared to turn up and take part, you were basically accepting that this government had a democratic plan and that you were going to take part in it. So in that way, it was almost inevitable that most people would turn up in support of this referendum, which means democratic changes here. Eventually, they want to restore a more parliamentary system and diminish the powers of the president. So it all sounds good. It all sounds very positive, and certainly that's what the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe are saying, that they're very heartened by this result, by this outcome, and commended the government for doing it. However, of course, there are many caveats. You know, the people I speak to, you know, the observers on the ground, the analysts, say that democracy here has got its own very local flavour. It's a society that is based on patronage and clans, and so people don't always vote with their own heads. They follow other people's, and so the kind of system that is emerging will become clearer in the coming months, because now everybody's going to be looking at the parliamentary elections in October, and what you've got are dozens of new political parties starting up now. So it's really a very plural and exciting time, but also that risk that you know, violence and danger is really never far around the corner.
Yes, how does this nod towards the government and what it's doing now help resolve the problems predominantly in the south, the epicenter of all the violence?
Really, I suppose there are two ways to look at this. You've got this democratic mandate now that this government has, but they're not saying very much about reconciliation. And really there's a big schism, if you like, in the south of the country between communities, particularly between the ethnic Uzbek communities and the Kyrgyz ones. And it remains to be seen how those communities that were so badly affected by this, particularly the Uzbek community, which suffered the bulk of the casualties and the damage, how they will be able to take part in this, how they will have an opportunity to take part in this new government.
Robin Forestier-Walker with that update from Bishkek. Thanks.